Fade it out. And good evening, everyone. This is a special, not really special, but this is a broadcast of um the BroDiallo show. You know, just an evening um broadcast. Who knows how long this is going to be going? But while it's here, let's take advantage of it. We got a time slot in the Q4 broadcast schedule. Can't let it go to waste, right? So you know, and Monday was Indigenous Peoples Day, so there was no show because I was like, man, how am I show up? I don't be showing up on Christmas and the white holidays, so I'll be goddamn if y'all see me sitting in here jawboning on Indigenous Peoples Day. So I took Monday off. I didn't do nothing about nothing. Shout out to the indigenous people, the true indigenous people, not the fake indigenous people, not the people who lie about being indigenous, like African Americans, African enslaved, descendants of enslaved, all these non-indigenous people who claim to be indigenous. African people are not indigenous to the Western Hemisphere. African people are not indigenous to North America. African people are not indigenous to South America or the Canadian or the Northern Wilderness. We are African people. We are non-immigrants. We are a forced population, a population under siege. We are a population experience systemic and systematic oppression and genocide. So we got a lot of things we can claim, but one thing we can't rightfully claim: any African or direct descendant thereof on U.S. soil cannot be claimed to be indigenous to this soil. And let me hold on. Let me just hit this button. Okay, I'll pretend like I'm starting again because I didn't hit the record. So now, this is an special evening broadcast of the BroDiallo show. Today is, almost halfway through this mug. Today is October 12th in the year of your Lord, 2022. I am broadcasting straight out of the studios of Q4 Radio, located in the sanctuary hypocrisy that is the city of Chirac, in the state of Illinois, the United States of America, and the ravaged late great planet Earth in the misnamed Milky Way galaxy. I'm very happy to have you here with me. If you are watching online, you can see at the scrolling across the bottom of the screen is the call-in number. I'm going to try to be more receptive to call-ins during the radio broadcast. You can also call in if you're listening through the radio broadcast at 312-985-7834, 312-985-7834. Just try to keep your comments, questions, and criticisms relevant to whatever topics we are exploring this evening. Unless you got something better to say. Y'all having trouble with the sound? My admin said it's sounding choppy. No sound? How's the sound now? How we doing? We good? Let me know in the comments. My admin says there's no sound, and it said the sound is choppy. Everything looks good on my end. I can pump up the volume. But I don't want to be screaming at y'all. I save all my screaming for when I'm on. Oh, sound is fine. Good. I save all my screaming for Fridays so I can scream at Dr. Ball on Black Power Media. So I like to preserve my voice for Fridays when I do my screaming. I preserve my screaming for Friday. I don't like this camera. I'm not trying to be a diva. Okay. All right. Hold on. Let me just adjust the camera, get a better angle. Okay. It's not moving. Looks crooked. What do you want from me? Okay. All right. So my vanity and my ego will not be assuaged. Anyway, again, thank you for tuning in. Today's broadcast is entitled The Chronic Diseases. And I want to talk about the chronic diseases for a few things, but there's some other things I wanted to touch on before we got started. And again, if you wanted to call in just let me know. People complain that I don't open the phones, and then when I open the phones, they leave me lonely. And there's several things I wanted to talk about, and I'm gonna tell y'all now, I'm off my square because I don't have my ink pen. I don't have my trusty Uniball pen, and I always take notes. I take notes when other people talk. I take notes when I talk, and I don't have my pen. And there's not one pen in this whole studio. It's not necessarily a big studio, but for all. Oh, god damn! I'm always made a liar. Here's a stash of pens. All right. Oh yes. Okay. It's not my Uniball pen, but this will suffice. Okay, I got my pen. Man, I was going through it. Y'all didn't see the internal strife that I was having due to lack of pen. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. First of all, I want to say something because I got like last Q&A we did, which was 2 Wednesdays ago or last Wednesday. I don't know. But the last Q&A I got, somebody asked me what I thought about transgenders and all the gays and all that stuff. And I thought it was clear on my position of it. But I did share where when I started giving it some thought, because I have to be honest, I hadn't given it much thought. And when I started thinking about it and thinking about because the transgender, and that's the thing, man, I'm mad at the gays because I was told as far back as the 80s, but I was told in the early 2000s, really, that gay marriage was going to destroy America. And Lord knows, I've been involved in an open conspiracy to bring down the United States, which I see is the seat of Western power, capitalism, imperialism, white hegemony. So I was waiting on the United States to fall when the gays were, walking down the altar, and everything from politicians to priests were telling me that America was going to fall if we let the gays get married. That would be the end of America. People would marry their dogs and all kind of stuff. And I'm like, all right then. Now, I'm a supporter of human rights, human dignities, and freedom. But my main reason for supporting gay marriage for my own selfish reasons is because I believe when they told me that gay marriage was going to destroy America. And yet here we are, over a decade of gay marriage, and America's still here, going strong, about to win a proxy war in Eastern Europe. And in real talk, I have I have gay neighbors, right? And they have the most subdued, calm home in the neighborhood. All their decorations, holiday decorations, are appropriate for the season. They don't leave them. They don't put out decorations too soon, and they put them away on time. The lawn is impeccable. When they have gatherings and parties, it's everything starts in an appropriate time and ends at an appropriate time, and don't spill out in the street. I mean, these are the most boring people. The most boring people. They got a little dog, two a car garage with two, well manicured automobiles. What the hell? But I got one more holdout. Now they say the trans people are going to destroy America because the gays have failed me. The lesbians, the gays, the bisexuals, y'all have failed me in the destruction of America. Even if they say, well, we're going to destroy America's morals. Great, because America has the worst freaking morals. Founded on slavery, genocide, greed, superiority, sexism, patriarchy. So I'm like, okay, I'll be fine. Maybe you won't tear down the bridges and the nuclear infrastructure, but just destroy the morals of America. Yes, I can deal with the backwards, Western, Christian, Judeo-Christian morality of America will be destroyed. I'm like, great, do it. Burn, burn. We don't need no water. But like I said, the gays. But now I'm hearing that the trans are going to destroy America. So come on, trans people. Don't let me down. Don't let me down. So let's see. But I mean, the trans people, they're losing their rights. The military ban, I guess. But I always say, here's my look on the trans issue, because the only reason I'm hearing is because brothers are bugging out because of Dwayne D. Wade's daughter is transgender. And brothers is taking that mad personal. And people asking me about it. And my answer is they are class enemies. I don't like D Wade, Gabrielle Union, or their children because they are class enemies. And it's kind of disgusting to me that so much attention is given to this little rich girl who's going to be fine. Look at that, rude, calling me during my broadcast. That's how much my people, my friends and family care about my job. Right? When there are countless homeless in shelters, in jail, transgender youth who can't get the medical treatment, the gender affirming treatment, can't get the support, can't get the acknowledgement, and they don't get none of the attention. Well, I guess they get the same negative attention, but they don't get the support. And I see working class down around the way, everyday people, before you go online to defend D Wade's daughter, how about you go find some trans youth and black trans youth in your community that really could use your help? Be a real ally. But my thought on that is because, what helped me to understand, if there's any other transphobe or recovering homophobes like myself, I never really got an opportunity to be transphobic. I was homophobic. It's fun. Good times back then. But never got a chance because I didn't even know what that was. Growing up in the Bible Belt, the buckle of the Bible Belt in the Midwest, I didn't even know what that was. But I'm sure if I knew about it in my teens and 20s, I would have hated on it. But, I missed that boat. But anyway, I just look at the gender identity confirmation that cisgendered heterosexual men go through. Whenever something happens to a cisgendered heterosexual man, whether it's impotence, whether he develops gynecomastia or some other condition or state, loses his job, men become suicidal and homicidal, and it doesn't even have to be a physical malalignment of their gender identity. Because we like to think, because there's this myth that people who behave and live the way they were born. If you were assigned male at birth, and like me, you're born cisgendered, heterosexual male, you think we got it made. Because society is oriented around confirming who we are and who we identify as. But there are many ways for a cisgendered heterosexual man's gender identity to be threatened. And the same cisgendered heterosexual alpha males that attack transgender boys and girls, men and women, just totally miss. It goes over their head how fragile our own identities are and how painful, physically painful, let alone the psychological and emotional stress when our identities don't align, when the conditions of our life, our environment do not confirm who we are and continue to align with it. So I would think that especially macho men, alpha males, should be the most sympathetic and the most understanding of transgender people when they articulate, hey, my assigned gender, the society's expectations of me do not align with what's inside me. So anyway, all that aside, the politicians and the preachers, some of the politicians and all the preachers are telling me that transgenders are going to do what the gays failed to do and destroy America or destroy the morals of America. So come on. Come on with it. Do the damn thing. And while we're on the topic, because this kind of touches on what I'm saying, because y'all believe that celebrities are superhuman. And so I want to kind of talk about that. So I think I should put that down. I want to touch on this whole concept that we sold each other into slavery. I know I was supposed to do a whole broadcast on it, but then I went traveling. I was traveling overseas and handling some things, and then it's just a bunch of stuff came up. So I didn't really get to do the whole thing on the whole we sold each other into slavery nonsense. And the woman king, where I did a whole thing. I do think I talked about the woman kings and the black mermaids. So you can go to my YouTube or go to, it's not up in my archives yet, but you can go check that out. But what I want to talk about for a second is the fact that black people sold each other into slavery. Now, if you look at the world, how it is divided of nations, there are certain classifications that all nations fall into. In my day, when I was up and coming and when I was an undergrad political science student, we used to call it the first world and the third world. And the first world and the third world were defined by economic terms, what they called soft power and hard power. And hard power was their economic and military power, a nation's standing and status economically and politically, that it had the ability to not only secure its own nation economically and militarily, but could project that power beyond its borders. That was the hard. And the soft power was the cultural, moral, ideological standing. So the United States being a Protestant nation, being a liberal nation, liberal politically and liberal economically stationed, the cultural products of it, which made it the third world, was basically the dysfunctional nations, the nations that had no political stability, constant coup d'etats, open blatant corruption in the courts and the judicial system and the legislator, open corruption, coup d'etats, as I said, upon coup, or coup upon coup, no ability and no technological or ability to what their terms, exploit their resources, extract, process, refine, and distribute their own resources. Life expectancy extremely low, which is tied to so the third world and the first world. You know, and then there was this loosely held concept of the second world, which were emerging nations. But now, as time went on, people started to take offense of the word third world because of the connotations, the racial, cultural connotations of third world, first and third, and the inferiority complex of nations of sub-Saharan Africa and most of North Africa, the so-called Middle East, Southeast Asia, of course, Central America, the Caribbean, South America, and then the various indigenous and racialized populations within the third world, racialized minorities or truly indigenous people like the people of the Pacific Islands, the Native Hawaiians, Native Americans, the Aboriginal people of the Australia and New Zealand. So those were all third world people, and nobody liked that word. So they changed that from third world to developed nations and undeveloped nations. Now, all the definitions and all the circumstances were identical, but they called the first world became called the developed nations, and the third world became the developing nations. And people thought that was a positive change in nomenclature or in the naming and titling, because it was a hopeful statement. Yeah, it was a backwards country. It was a dysfunctional country. It was an impoverished country. It was a colonized country. It was a neo-colonized country, but it was on its way. There was something to strive for. One day, like Yvette Carnell says, those countries will be made white. And then people started to say, well, these countries, that we calling developed, that really doesn't speak to their conditions, that really doesn't speak to the history. So they threw away first world, third world, then they threw away developed and developing and undeveloped or underdeveloped, because that's what they really said. These countries their problem isn't their lack of development. That's not the problem. You look at countries like Nigeria. Nigeria is known to have some of the best physicians in the world, but the problem is those physicians can't work in Nigeria. Some of the best mathematic and scientific minds. Look at India. Some of the best technological and what they call techies come out of India. And these so-called developing nations, it's not the fact that they're not developed. There's some other issues there. So then they changed the term again, because they say, let's not say a term that puts one above the other. Let's not say a term that put one in front of the other, or let's not put a term to identify the gap between one and the other. So now they say the global north and the global south. We went from third world and first world nations to developing to develop. And now when you listen to popular media, they say, oh, in the developed, no, they say in the north, the global north, not just the north, but in the global north and the global south, which is weird too. But that's not even consistent because, but I'm not going to say that. But so now that's the new terminology. Now, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed in the power, the resources, the military, the exploitation, the death and destruction and disruption and coup d'etat. Nothing has changed but the name. Rebranding, like they changed the label. They changed the logo, but it's all the same. Because I started being interested in politics in the Reagan era. I mean, the first political conflict that I followed was Jimmy Carter versus Ronald Reagan. I wasn't even 10 years old. Jimmy Carter versus Ronald Reagan. And it was perplexing to me when it was the first time I understood what the president was. I was taking, like third grade civics, second grade civics, and they would focus so much on shit that had nothing to do with politics. Now, I mean, I've told you before, I remember watching a nightly news broadcast, and they said that Ronald Reagan runs 5 miles a day. And then Jimmy Carter's political team was like released footage of Jimmy Carter jogging around the Washington Memorial with Secret Service. And they were like, well, Jimmy Carter runs 10 miles a day. And I turned to my mama, I said, Mama, why for they, what difference does it make how far the goddamn president run? I didn't say that. I got the shit slapped out of me. But I said, Mama, why they focusing on how the president run? We ain't voting for the marathon representative to represent us in the Olympics. We voting for the chief executive of the United States. I probably wasn't that, but that's when I first learned that, man, they play games with people. They playing games. You watch 400-Pound Life when my 600-pound life. Whenever the people don't follow Dr. Now's thing, you're playing games. You're playing games. Whenever people come in with excuses, he said you're playing games. And he obviously is not a man who likes games. I love games. I was playing the game before I got here. Outriders on Xbox. So I had like 30 minutes to kill. And you know damn well I ain't showing up early to nothing. I'm too black for that. So I had about 30 minutes to kill. So I played the game. But I knew they were playing games with politics. But beyond that, let's I like the word third world, first world. I like it. And I know it is a world that talks about the suppression and repression of the global south and the global north, but it's true. I prefer an unpleasant truth than a rebranded lie. That's just me. But I'm going to use global north and global south. But Noam Chomsky wrote way back in the 80s too. I'm taking y'all back in the day. I'm old school. Y'all see all this salt, pepper beard. I'm getting up there. But Noam Chomsky said there was only one thing that distinguished the third world from the first world, or the developed nations from the undeveloped nations, or the global north. He said there's only one thing. It's not about democracy. Well, some countries are democratized. It's not about how enterprising the nation is. So this nation is full of hard workers and educated. That's not that. He said there's one thing. He said, without exception, the third world are nations that were not able to get out from U.S. colonialism in the 20th century. The nations that, like the United States, got out from colonialism. And he put the cutoff time, he said it was about between the 1920s, by World War I. If your nation was colonized between World War I and World War II, you were third world without exception. Without exception. So the only thing that makes the so-called dysfunctional nations dysfunctional is the fact that they were mismanaged, raped, exploited, and continue to be subverted by European nations. Europe created the third world, developing nations, the global south. All of these where there is rampant disease. I mean, in some of these so-called third world, developing global south nation, we still got the plague and polio. People are dying of rabies and malaria, diseases that have long been cured in the global north. We got coup d'etats, medieval torture, and murder. I remember I was talking to a friend of mine, Junior, and we were talking about the Luima torture, where the police took this black man into, and I was at Brooklyn College at the time, and they took this black man into a stall in the police station and rammed a plunger up his rectum to the point where it pierced his colon. He almost died of sepsis. And so, of course, you know, I was young when I was young, and I was with the movement. We were in the streets, we were protesting, we were on our campuses. We wanted our college presidents to release a statement. We wanted the administration of the city college, CUNY City University of New York. We wanted action. Same thing, fighting for the same shit y'all fighting for now, 30 years ago, fighting for the same shit we was fighting for 100 years ago. What I call atrocity hopping, the same old cycle, hamster wheel politics. But I would talk to my West Indian friends. Had a good friend, shout out Cullen, GT Man from Guyana. I was talking to GT, who was a veteran of the U.S. military, and he was also in the Guyanese military. And I was talking to another brother, a Kingstonian. Now, somebody later told me every Guyanese man you meet is going to claim to be from Georgetown. Most of them aren't. And then somebody later told me every dude from Jamaica is going to swear he's from Kingston, and most of them aren't. But these are my two friends. I knew them for over a decade. And they said they were, but anyway, they were telling me, man, it's funny to them when they see black people in the United States protesting police brutality because of the brutality of the military and policing agencies in the global south, in Guyana and Jamaica. He was like, the cops will literally fold you up in front of your family, crumple you up, torture you, shoot you, and leave you in a dumpster and set the dumpster on fire and bet not nobody say nothing. You know, he was like, you know, U.S. police, as horrible as the U.S. police are, they're nothing compared. And he was like, your cops are got non-military. He's talking about demilitarize the police. He was like, the police and the military are exactly the same in these countries. But I digress. That's the only difference, the global north and the global south. Now, the reason I'm pointing this out is because Dr. John Henry Clark and Professor William Mackey both informed me that when someone says black people sold each other into slavery, the follow-up question should be, what did they do with the money? If black people were players in the slave, because every other nation on the face of this earth that can be defined as first world, defined as developed, defined as the global north, defined as a world power in the West, every single nation of Western Europe and its bastard offspring, Australia, its bastard offspring, the United States, its bastard offspring, Canada. And I got some bad news for y'all. The Swedes, the Swiss, the Newfoundland, Iceland, those northern Nordic Europeans, hands are as bloody. Hands are as bloody. There are over almost 200 million people in the world who speak Portuguese. Less than 50 million people in Portugal. There are more Portuguese speakers on South America. In the one country, there are more Portuguese speakers in Brazil than in the country of Portugal where the language originated. So if Africans were players in the slave trade, were drivers or profiters from the slave trade, there would be a first world African nation. Where is it presented? If Africans were players in the slave trade, there would be some Africans, or there would be a population of people outside of the African continent who speak an African language or an African dialect, like people outside of England speaking English, people outside of France who speak French, people outside of Spain who speak of the Spanish. Where they at though? Where they at though? What did they do with the money? What was the currency that Africans received? And they said, until you can present that to me, I don't want to hear it. We know what various European nations have done. Even those who did not directly colonize nations, like the Swiss, they were the bankers, they were the financiers, they were where our gold and wealth was stored. They were accomplices in the global slave trade and colonialism. The Irish were colonized, but the Irish mercenaries, you ever notice? Irish indentured service, the Irish the coppers and the paddy wagons, policing in America, the paddy rollers, the slave catchers, the poor white trash. And my wife told me to stop saying white trash. Because when you say white trash, that suggests that the default trash is non-white. Because if you have to qualify trash as white, then when you just say trash, you must be talking about non-whites. And the reality is, we are the standard. So when you say trash, it should be inferred that you're talking about white trash. So don't ever say white trash, just say trash, and it should be understood. Same thing with people of color. We are the standard. The majority of people on earth are people of color. So when you say people, you should be referring to people who have color, because we are the standards, we are the original, and we are the predominant super hyper majority. So you should say people of no color, because those are the people you should have to specify, because they are the small, minute minority. No matter how destructive they are, no matter how much shit they stole or how much they've imposed themselves on other people, they're the numerical, the math, when it's mathing, still says, if you're talking about a human being, if you are up in outer space and you throw a rock at Earth, you're more likely to hit water. But if you throw a rock at Earth from a million light years away and it lands on a landmass, you're going to hit a person of color, because we are the standard, we are the majority. So you should never say people of color. If you want to talk about quote unquote people who have color, just say people. Because the standard reality, the majority reality, is human beings are people with hue, with various degrees of color, and so you don't say water fish, you just say fish, and people understood it's from the water. And there are some fish that have lungs that can breathe on land, but you have to specify them. You don't have to specify the fish with gills. I saw this documentary. This African fish, when the water dries up, that fish comes on land and just starts, flapping on land. Now that's a mutated fish. That's an obscure fish. And when I want to talk about that fish, that's when I have to use special qualifiers. Because when I say fish, you know what the blood clot I mean. When I say people or person or human, you know what I mean. And if I'm talking about some anomaly, some mutation of humanity, then I'll say people of no color. When I want to say trash, I have to specify black trash, Asian trash, native trash, indigenous trash, because when I just say trash, the standard for trash, for racism, genocide, global warfare, hegemony, destroying ecosystems across the globe for short-term profits. When I say trash, I don't need to qualify. You know who I'm talking about. As you speaketh is as you thinketh. As you thinketh is how you navigate and function and relate to the world. All the way back, circling back, I continue to digress. As I was saying, when they say we sold each other into slavery, if you can't demonstrate If you're talking about the impact of a historical event, if you can't show me the real world outcomes, then shut the blood clot up. But here's another caveat. Some people maybe aren't sophisticated enough to understand that. But let me tell you, when you go in and create systemic disruption, Colin Powell was brought before the a congressional committee investigating George W. Bush and his role in Iraq. And he was the odd man out. He was kicked out of the inner circle of all those war criminals, all those genocidal, bloodthirsty war profiteers, international war criminals of George Bush, Pompeo. A lot of those guys just jumped right into what's it? Paul Wolfowitz. All those neocon, they were calling them the neocons back then. The MAGA heads now were the neocons of the early 2000s, the war on terror. But anyway, Colin Powell fell out of favor. He was the mascot. They were even talking about running Colin Powell for president after Bush. But he fell out of favor with Massa. And all you Uncle Tom, handkerchief head, boot licking sellouts, let me tell you, ain't nothing more disposable to white people than black sellouts. Ain't nothing more interchangeable and disposable to white people, the white elites, than black sellouts. So you keep selling out. I hope it's worth it. But anyway, Colin Powell came, and he was everyone was excited because they were like, well, now he's going to start to tell the truth about the Iraq war, because the war wasn't going well. George Bush said they would welcome us with open arms and they would throw rose petals into the streets and they're going to love us because we're going to liberate Iraq. First, they went there for weapons of mass destruction, which was a lie, and he knew it was a lie. And then they said, well, first he said he was going there to hunt down Al-Qaeda and the people who attacked us on 9/11. That justification broke down. Then he said he was going after weapons of mass destruction. That justification broke down. Then at one point, they gave several other justifications, but then they kind of fell on liberating the women. The women were under oppression. And George W. Bush sent his wife out. He sent his old ugly ass wife out there to tell, oh, the women are forced to wear hijabs. And then that broke down. So then they said, we're bringing democracy. And then they ultimately said, well, we have no reason to be here, but we can't leave because we have to save face. So the United States went into Iraq, disrupted the leadership, the infrastructure. They bombed and destroyed the lead. So economically, socially, culturally, politically, the United States invaded and upended Iraqi civilization. The barbarians at the gate. Right? And so Colin Powell came to Congress and he said something. It's something we've all heard and we all understood. He said, if you break it, you bought it. And when he said you break it, you bought it, because remember early in the war, he was the dude who justified the war. He went before the UN with these charts and graphs and held up these charts and graphs and was pointing them and pointing out to the UN saying, oh, these are mobile missile units where they're driving nuclear missiles all over Iraq and putting them on trains. And then he said, oh, these are mobile chem plants, like some old Breaking Bad shit. These are Winnebagos with chemical weapons laboratories in the back. And he's like, we got satellite footage of Saddam Hussein weapons of mass destructions all over Iraq. He was the man, and he was like, well, Colin Powell's a warm Negro. He's the kind of Negro that you want to sit by the fire and read your stories. The kind of Negroes they put in movies with Shirley Temple to sing the song of the South. He was a warm, fuzzy Negro. Not to mention that dude had been committing international war crimes since the 60s. He had been covering up the My Lai massacre. That's when white folks finally found out, oh, this is a good Negro. We got to keep this coon in our pocket. He's an attack dog for white imperialism. He first got his chops. He first got his props from the imperialists by helping to cover up war crimes in Vietnam, atrocities in Vietnam. So they were like, oh, bring out Colin Powell to justify U.S. imperialism. And then Not only that, there's a school in the south suburbs of Chicago, a black school named after this war criminal, Colin Powell, middle school and high school. When Colin Powell died, I wish there was a hell for that piece of shit to burn in. Chuck D of Public Enemy put out a dedication on his Instagram. And I went and told Chuck D about his war crimes. Of course, Chuck D ignored the hell out of me. Who am I? The girls them sugar. But beyond that, who am I? So he ignored me. But hey, we got to call it as we see it. Gonna tell the truth. So anyway, Colin Powell initially justified, and he was a warmonger. He loves the blood of foreign people. Notice I didn't say foreign people of color. He loves the blood of foreign people because he works for trash and thus makes him trash by proxy. And so this piece of shit got disposed of by his white daddy, got kicked off the lap. George Bush stood up and Colin Powell slid off his lap onto the floor, and all the other bloated, predatory white men laughed. And Colin Powell said, I'm going to get you. I'm going to go tell the truth. After I lied us into this war, you use my credibility to lie us into this war. So I'm going to use my credibility to tell the truth. And he said, he went before the Congress and said, when you break it, you brought it. And what that means is when a nation or a population of people go in and upend the system, whatever replaces that system, the people are responsible for it. They are responsible for it. So as the United States went into Iraq and upended their system, their culture, their mores, their laws, their national integrity, their sovereignty, whatever happened in Iraq after that was owned. You bought it. It was owned by the United States, owned that. The same thing as Israel is committing genocidal settler colonialism in Palestine. What happens in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip? Israel owns that. Historically. In Afghanistan, same thing. You break it, you bought it. The United States is responsible for everything from the ongoing violence to the starvation and malnutrition to the mistreatment of the women of Afghanistan. The United States owns that. The disruption and dysfunction in Venezuela. So let's take that understanding of the nature of power and society and responsibility and blame all the way back to slavery. The white man didn't pull up his boats to the shores of Africa and get out of them rat-infested, intestinal worm, tapeworm infested, VD and syphilis infested sailors from Europe. Them boats where every crevice of that boat was filled with human feces, rat feces, and urine. The dregs, when those dregs got off the ships on the coast of Africa, where they could smell them before they could see them, that trash landed on Africa's coast. They didn't ask permission. They didn't come and say, may we anchor off your shores? May we approach you, sir? Shall we have a discussion? When they didn't put out folding tables and take out those little visors, those accounting visors, and take out a ancient abacus or calculator and a ledger book and sit there and negotiate with Africans the price and the amount. That was not a discussion in trade or an exchange between equals. They came there with cannons, muskets, swords. Priest who blessed it all. Ain't one atrocity committed by the Western power structure that has not been sanctioned by a priest. But also, there ain't one atrocity committed in the Arab slave trade and Arab colonization of Africa that hasn't been sanctioned by a imam. But I can't. Them are two birds. I only got one stone. I'm gonna stick with this. We sold each other into slavery. Right? So when the Europeans came as colonizers, they came as invaders. Because if I want to do trade, I was just in out of the country. Right? And when I wanted to do commerce, I had to do commerce in their people's currency. The Yankee dollar was no good there. So when you go to a country to do, you have to exchange the currency. What currency did they pay Africans in? What did Africans need from Europe? Africa didn't need a goddamn thing from Europe. Didn't need it then, don't need it now. Don't need a goddamn thing. There's enough land, natural resources. Don't need a goddamn. Africa don't need a goddamn thing from Europe. Name something. Name a resource that Europe has ever had that Africa has lacked. Land, water, gold, bauxite, fertile land to grow crops, technological know-how. As Del Jones said to us, we were richer than the people who invaded us. We have been richer than the people who colonized us. So what you gonna bring? What did they bring? What the blood clot did they have that Africa needed? So this is what colonizers do. They have to create a need in you. They have to create an artificial need in order to create an exchange. In Kenya, they literally would kidnap people's children. Queen Elizabeth, they would kidnap people's children and say, you want your child back? You better go work the plantations. You better go to the mines. You better go out and produce and bring some colonial goods and resources. Go rape your own land, bring it to me, and I'll give you back your child. They turned the children into the currency. This artificial debt. So when they went into Africa, they had to create an upheaval and disruption of Africa's systems and institutions. And they broke Africa so they own it. And I know some Africans participated in the system. Africans submitted to the system. Yeah, lungfish or Grimlocks. Oh, nerdy ass Grimlock saying lungfish ain't mutated. Everything is mutated. Evolution is mutation. What are you talking about? There's nothing alive today that it hasn't mutated. But I digress. Don't debate me on no goddamn lungfish. You get to the point. Anyway, what I was saying. Oh, right. So they created upheaval in Africa to create artificial needs, artificial conflict. Africans never conceived of a gun, never needed a gun, never wanted a gun. Then Africans like, we need guns. We need some guns. Why? Well, they gave up next my neighbor who I was beefing with. We're herdsmen and we need to graze cattle. They're agriculturalists. They don't want us on their land. And then they got guns. We were dealing with this conflict in our own way. And here come the Europeans to insert guns. So everybody need guns. So anyway, long story short, and this happens, let's bring it back up to the modern time. When the United States went into Afghanistan and the United States went into Iraq, they had these people called fixers. And the fixers were the people who would do translation. They would be tour guides. They would show basically Iraqi citizens, Afghan citizens who would work with, and a lot of them were from ethnic groups like oppressed, like the Kurds. The Kurds in Iraq had been oppressed and discriminated against in Iraq, right? So when they were Iraqi citizens or Iraqi nationals, but they were mistreated by the Iraqi government. You know? And so when Iraq got invaded, those people were like, hell, yo, what can I do for you? Let me help you. I speak the local language. I speak Farsi. I speak Pashtun. I know the various, I know the lay of the land. Just like if the United States got invaded by communists, boy, y'all know. If the United States got invaded, you ever see that movie Red Dawn? If communist Russia and Cuba, if Cuba invaded the United States, because that's what they're telling. If Venezuela, they're telling us Venezuela. If North Korea even if communists invaded the United States, boy, y'all gonna see the biggest traitor. Y'all gonna see BroDiallo on all the posters. Have you seen this man wanted traitor to America? I'd betray America. Oh, it'd be so fast. I wouldn't even hear the dollar amount. Like, well, Mr. Kenyatta, we thank you, Comrade Kenyatta, for helping us get our beachhead established. And what we're going to do is pay you. I'll take it. Don't even tell me the amount. What are you going to pay me in rupees? You know, I'd be Comrade Diallo. I'd be on the news. I'd be on CNN. Surrender is our best option. They only want what's best for us. Please come out of your homes. Greet our communist overlords. They're only here. They only want what's best for us. So I understand. But if you know, but I live in the home of the empire. That's why it's okay. If I was in Africa, I wouldn't. If I got invaded by capitalists, I'd be neutral. If the United States is invaded by another capitalist country, I'm gonna just be neutral. I'm gonna just get me a fold-out chair, my organic green tea, and I'm gonna put it and watch them slaughter each other. Then I don't have a team. I don't have nobody to root for. I don't care. It's like these professional sports teams. I don't understand how y'all root for either side, either one of these rich-ass ball chasers. I wish they all get Achilles tendon or whatever happened. I wish there were no pro sports in the United States. Anyway, what was I talking about? Anyway, you have these fixers, right? These people who worked with and aided the invading force. Now, are they responsible for the invasion? No. Did they personally profit from the invasion? Not a significant amount. It is not relevant. Are they to blame? No. No. Should they be tried for treason? Yes, I believe there are traitors. But traitors don't cause the invasion. Traitors did not create the traitor is a byproduct of the initial invasion. The traitor, there's nobody for me to betray America to. There's no invasion force. So who can I betray? The only way I can become a traitor is if somebody takes the initial action of invading the United States. And if the United States drove off the traitor, I would be tried and hanged. I know I would. And I'd be just like that dude from Mandingo. Before you hang me, kiss my ass. That's just how it works. So when Iraq and Iran got invaded, there were Afghan fixers. They called them fixers. And when the United States pulled out, they promised the fixers, if this shit goes south, we're going to bring you to America. You can open up a shitty store in the black community and get paid. A shitty bodega, a shitty corner gas station or store in the hood of America. You'll be overnight millionaire. You'll be voting Republican in one generation. That's what they told them. But then when the shit went south, they left them people, those unfortunate traitors of their own people. They left their asses sitting right there. And the Afghans went about murdering and killing them step by step. Same thing happened in Israel. When the Nakba came before the first Intifada, there were mad Palestinians cooperating and aiding Israel. Are they responsible for the genocidal settler colonialism in Palestine? No. They took advantage of it, but are they responsible? You don't see no Palestinian get on the stage and say, oh, we helped Israel take over our country. You ain't seen one Afghan or one Iraqi saying their own people was responsible or played a role in the invasion. Even go back to Nazi Germany. I'm sick of doing this. It's tired. There were honorary Aryans. There were these people called honorary Aryans. Right? And the honorary Aryans were people who would win, who were of Jewish descent, who worked hard and earned their Aryan status, because Aryan is just made up. Like white, it's just some shit crazy white people pulled out of their butts. It's nonsense, right? How do I share this screen? Oh, here it is. I'll just show y'all. Go get this book. See this book? Hitler's Jewish Soldiers, the untold story of Nazi racial laws and the men of Jewish descent in the German military modern war studies. Right? There were Jews all throughout the Third Reich. Physicians, scientists, artists. But you'll never find a Jew anywhere in the world saying, oh, Jews loaded our own people onto the concentration camps. Let me see. Let's see if I can find. Let's see. I know this is kind of a funny story, but look at this. I'll just pull it up on Wikipedia because I don't have time. This is called Jewish Ghetto Police. That sounds like a freaking white Jewish trap game. But these were the ghettos, the Warsaw ghettos, were policed by these men. These are men, Jews, who had full authority, police. They had full authority over the ghettos and the slums and the Jewish district. And they would brutalize, rape, rob. These are all Jewish men. They look like Nazis. They dressed up, but you see the Star of David instead of the swastika, right? This is one of their things, ghetto police. These were judo, and they had full authority to arrest, to kill, to maim, and they got more rations, they got money, they got status, they got women. But you won't find me a Jew. Find me a Jew. Find anywhere, even an anti-Zionist Jew. Find me go get Norman Finkelstein. Go find me the most radical, far out there, anti-Zionist Orthodox Jew. Find me a person of Jewish descent that'll fix their mouth to say, we loaded each other onto their cattle car. Because it was mostly the Nazis said that the Jews were subhuman. They didn't want to have physical contact with the Jews. There were Jewish architects. If you go look at the fictional movie, but it's a historically based movie, everything in that movie actually happened. It was based on a real person called Oskar Schindler. You go look up Schindler's List, and even the Jewish man, Steven Spielberg, I think he produced and directed, either way. And they showed Jewish architects consulting with the Nazis on how best to construct the concentration camps and the gas chambers. That's what happens when your shit gets turned upside down. Every people that come under genocidal oppression, colonization, slavery, you have the people who resist, the people who submit and acquiesce, and you have the traitors who cooperate. But none of those three people in those classifications are responsible. And ultimately, all three of those categories die. These same men in the fancy suits, these same men with the hats and the special authority who coordinated, cooperated, and aided the Nazis, these Jewish men eventually found themselves in the gas chamber too. The same slave raiders, many of them Muslim, because black Muslims, Arabized blacks have been catching black people long before the white man ever got there. Generations of black slave catchers. Uncle Tom sellouts, who we tolerate, whom we should not tolerate, but that's another thing. Those men, many of the slave catchers later found themselves shackled, later found themselves colonized. Many of the fixers in Iraq and Afghanistan. See if I can pull up. Fixers. Oh, there's a whole movie about it? I didn't know that. They made a whole movie of it. Look at this. Somebody come look at it. Fixer. This is a documentary. But these fixers, look at it, talking to the invading troops. That would be me if communists invaded America. Look at it. Hey, man just drone bombed your whole family. Now, so all of that is to help you to understand. When your system and society faces a great upheaval, there are many different reactions to societal scale upheavals and societal scale disruption. But like the late, great Colin Powell said, you break it, you bought it. And if you bought it, you own it. And if you own it, you're responsible. You're to blame. So we can't have a discussion about black traitors. We can talk about black traitors who aided the colonizers and the slavers during the Ma'afa. We could talk about the black traders here and today. And what I find most curious, what's most ironic about these black people, these Uncle Tom handkerchief head, that whenever we want to talk about the atrocities that Europeans committed against us, that what about we sold each other? You know, there are, like I said, three types of Africans. Then and now, those who resist, those who submit to the status quo, and those who cooperate and embrace the status quo, the traitors, the revolutionaries, the masses, and the traitors. And it seems like the traitors of today are the ones most obsessed and identify with the most of the traitors of then. There is no atrocity, colonization, slavery, modern day invasion, imperialism, military occupation. There is no atrocity that people have undergone. I mean, let's go to Israel. Not Israel. Let's go to Ireland. Ireland was colonized and enslaved. Irish. I'm gonna stop playing with y'all. Irish like to pretend they were slaves. We were slaves. I can't do an Irish accent. Let me not even play. But Irish accent sounds just like West Indians. Isn't that curious? You should look up Irish Indentured Service and African slaves in Jamaica. But anyway, the Irish has half the country was coordinating with the colony because Ireland was under occupation for 800 years, longer than Africa. European slaves, but I've never heard an Irishman. I heard Irish talk about traitors, cutting the throat of traitors, cutting off the ears of traitors and mailing them to their mothers. I never heard them say, oh, it's because the Irish worked with the British is the reason behind, as if. That's some old self-hate shit parading as historical curiosity or historical analysis. That's just self-hate. And I tell you, the person bringing up we sold each other is the kind of Negro that would sell you out today. Charleston White. Charleston White is weird, but I can't talk about Charleston White. That's all I'm going to say on this we sold each other. It's tired. It's tired. What is your point? Okay, let's move on. Even in the United States, even in the Revolutionary War of the United States, they say about 20% of the colonists, when George Washington and all of them, even then, the majority of Americans were neutral, and a large number of Americans were on the side of were loyalist or royalist. But I don't ever hear anyone who is talking about the crimes of their oppressor and they bring up the traitors and the role traitors played. I mean, Charleston White is a weirdo. Here's the thing about Charleston White. He claims to be against the gangsters, but he's literally like the flip side of the coin. He has the same degenerate and backwards outlook and values as the gangsters. He trumps, he supports, he's a Trump 20. If you look at some of his more recent broadcasts, he has Trump 2024. He's pro-Trump. How you claim to be anti-crime and you support the Trump regime? You're MAGA, which is a criminal enterprise unto itself. It's like Candace Owens. Candace Owens claims to be outraged by the corruption of Black Lives Matter. And that, recenter, let me not say some things. She's still a Black woman. Handkerchief head, coon, Tom Trader, but a Black woman nonetheless. So let me watch my mouth because I was raised by a Black, birthed by a Black woman. I'm married to a Black woman. So I have to be careful what I say about even the most degenerate, backwards, treasonous Black women. Let me watch my mouth. But she claims, how are you outraged about the corruption and you support the MAGA movement, which is one of the most corrupt and backwards movements that have stole more money, but whatever. What the blood clot ever. But yeah, it's funny. Charleston White is lost, but he's just as lost as the people he claims to criticize and to oppose. This is peculiar. He is a Tom. But people, and that's the thing about it where you have like he claims he's being moral because he's very correct in terms of these degenerate backwards gangsters and rappers. They are pieces of shit scum. But you can't just have, if your morals are not informed by history and politics and ideology, your morals can mislead you. Like I'm a lawful person, it's or white morality. White people will literally steal a whole country, but I think I'm a good man because if I find a wallet, I'll return it on the stolen country. So a white man's like, well, I found this wallet and I took it to the police station. I'm a good man. Standing on a stolen country where the native people of that country are still on concentration camps. He said, don't call. Del Jones said, don't call where they put the Native Americans reservations. He said, reservations are what you get at a hotel. That's not a reservation. It's a concentration camp. It's native people here today still under genocidal oppression. So white morality is you steal the land, but you return a stolen wallet. So he's a fucked up dude. I don't like him. I was hoping, I'm like, wow, somebody's trending, calling out because I've been calling out the gangster rap and criminality, and I've been called a snitch and all that. But you know, let's talk. Let's get to the topic. Anybody know what's the topic today? Let me see if I don't mess up. Hold on a second, because time is running out. They fixed the clocks. Yeah, hey, they fixed the clocks, y'all. I don't know if you've been following the BroDiallo broadcast. I've been complaining that the time clock is inconsistent with the computer clocks. And so I got like literally 4 different times. And now they're all aligned. They're all within 1 or 2 minutes of each other. But today is called the chronic diseases. I wanted to call it just the chronic. I didn't want to get copyright infringed by but anyway, the chronic did profits, racism, and slow genocide. That's what we're about to talk about. So if you wanted to hear the topic, like to hear it, here it go. Anyway, but I got to do this first. I'm doing it pretty late. This is Q4 Radio. You can listen to Q4 across the globe and the many independent progressive programs, everything from independent progressive music, independent progressive thought and voices, and interesting programs dealing with everything from science fiction to hardcore reality like the BroDiallo show. Okay? So I say that q4.org. Please like, share, subscribe. The BroDiallo broadcast. I am only here. I am truly listener supported. And the only way for me to stay uncensored, that's the wrong one. The only way for me to stay uncensored, the only way for me to continue to show up here and have these discussions, insights, and bring you to various guests and so on and so forth. And as we proceed, is for your support. There are various ways for you to support. You can become a Patreon supporter, patreon.com/Diallo Kenyatta. I also have a Venmo and Cash App, BroDiallo. For those, you can also, if you ain't got that paper, I fully understand the state of not having paper. You can like, share, subscribe, and share the show with your friends, lovers, enemies, allies, and acquaintances, and even people you are engaged in a parasocial relationship with. Get it out there. Help me win the algorithm wars so we can have radical analysis from a Pan-African perspective, because that's all I got to offer y'all, and I hope it's appreciated enough where you are motivated to support. Now, let's talk about what motivated me to talk about this is because y'all really think rappers and athletes are superheroes and somehow above and beyond the status of Black people. So y'all believe that when Coolio is found dead of a heart attack in his 50s, when DMX, a long time drug addict who struggled with addiction. I don't even know if he struggled with addiction. It seems like he fully embraced his addiction. I just watched the DMX documentary, or when Brittany Griner gets locked up in a foreign land as a U.S. citizen, flying to a country that U.S. is engaged in a full-scale proxy war against, and also fly to a nation that has a full-scale anti-LGBTQAI, and a nation that is deeply steeped in racism, and gets hemmed up over there. Y'all really are shocked when shit that happens to everyday round the way people happens to people who show up on TVs and radios from time to time. And it's very curious to me. I just got into a debate about Tupac, and people said Tupac was assassinated. And I argued that, there was a comment, and I remember If Kwabena is watching, you know, if B Cream or Who Stole the Soul, if these brothers are watching, they the N-word police. I said I will allow myself one N-word per broadcast, one or none. Sometimes I just gotta, man. You know, I gotta go there. But so I give myself one, and I say it in context. I don't use the word loosely. But Chris Rock said, I've been going around hearing people talk about Biggie was assassinated and Tupac was assassinated. Please, them niggas got shot. Now, the reason he said that is to assert that someone is assassinated is to say that they had a certain status and standing, that they were a threat to the status quo. They were a threat to people who held institutional power, the people who control the means of production, that they were actively engaged or on the verge of engaging in actions that could threaten the established power structure. That's an assassinated person. And to say that individuals like Tupac was assassinated is to say, number one, to suggest that Tupac was engaged in those activities, or that assassination, the concept and understanding of assassination has been so diluted, it can apply to almost anyone, even people who were not only not fighting against the status quo, but were living embodiments of capitalism, consumerism, gangsterism, petty thuggery. And people are like, oh, Tupac got killed by the government. And let's say he did. I don't buy that shit for 1 second. But let's say he did. Now, if I became a threat to the status quo, which I seek to do, I am engaged in what is called an open conspiracy. I want to subvert the systems and institutions of capitalism and global white domination. But I understand through my study of politics and movements and history and our scholars that people of my nature don't tend to come under, even if we're surveilled, don't tend to come under direct action until we're deemed a threat. That might change tomorrow. And I hope to get there. And I conduct myself in such a way and I put things in place for that eventuality that I'm striving for. It's an open conspiracy. I don't hide it. But here's the thing. Tupac, let's just go over the night. Tupac was threatening to kill other people. And Tupac, when I speak, I got maybe 100 people listening to me. Tupac say something, 100 million. This is pre-internet. Tupac's voice was one of the most powerful and most widespread voices in the world at the time, most recognizable people. I just came back from Italy. I got out of there the day before the fascists were voted in. And I saw Tupac t-shirts. People didn't even speak English. He was threatening to kill people, asserting that he had relations with people's wives. He said that he was going to destroy people, and the people he claimed he was beefing with were people who were also engaged in criminal. He also kept close, intimate ties and friendships with people who were engaged in gang activity, gangsters, gangbangers. The night he was killed, he was videotaped assaulting a person, who was also a known gang associated person. So if the FBI was conspiring to take down Tupac, the only thing they had to do is, like I would do if the United States was invaded by a capitalist racist country, is get their green tea and a fold out chair and extend their feet and relax. Because Tupac was literally courting death. He was literally courting death. And I mean, like, look at Malcolm X as a contrast, a person who was truly assassinated. Malcolm X was speaking peace and reconciliation. That's what he was calling for. He said he did everything in his power to avoid naming names. And he said he only started naming names because they started their campaign of harassment and threat. Malcolm X was traveling with a security detail. Malcolm X was embedded in the community, just to say all the things. Malcolm did things that were necessary, that were life affirming. His words and behaviors were life affirming. Same thing with Dr. King. Now, if Malcolm X was involved with the gangs and the criminal element in his community, the drug element, if Malcolm X was flaunting wealth while dwelling amongst people who didn't have wealth, but what were and people who were known populations and demographics that were known to engage in criminal activity, violence, threats, and just before he went on stage, he was seen stomping out and him and his entourage assaulting a member of the nation or the Fruit of Islam. Same thing with Dr. King. I mean, we just got to be real. And I know this is hurting some people because we got these attachments to these famous people. We got these attachments to these famous people. So I'm just saying it's weird to me. I even saw just 2 days ago, my wife and I, we go on YouTube sometime and watch Judge Mathis. We love us some Judge Mathis. But as I was scrolling down the suggested videos on YouTube, as we were drinking our coffee and about to watch a Judge Mathis excerpt, little show, I saw the plot. This is the interview that got Coolio murdered. This interview is why Coolio was killed. Illuminati blood sacrifice conspiracy shit. And Coolio, like a lot of these other people, ain't saying nothing we don't know. Hollywood is corrupt. Hollywood, they have these wild sex parties and they do drugs. And Hollywood has cults in it that does weird rituals. Gasp. And then the Hollywood Illuminati's like, oh, we got to kill Coolio for saying things that we all know. Now, Tom Cruise starred in a Hollywood movie that showed the rituals, Eyes Wide Shut. Why did they kill Tom Cruise? And there was one. Who was it? Oh, y'all heard of this? It's showing the rituals. There was this movie came out in 1999, Eyes Wide Shut. They showed all the rituals and all the weird shit they do, Bohemian Grove type shit. And the weird mask and the sex and the drugs and the chants and all the weird shit. And that was why didn't they kill Tom Cruise? We all know all that weird shit that goes on. They've been doing it since the days of the royal palaces. There's a TV series. I didn't watch the whole TV series. My wife loved it, called The Peaky Blinders. And part of that, which is it's a post World War II. The historical time was rooted between World War I and World War II. So the historical aspects of it were really interesting of me, but the rest of it was kind of whack. I just got kind of sick of it. But there was a part where the oligarchs, the Bolshevik Revolution had happened in Russia. And the Russian oligarchs stole all the money out of Russia and ran to Western Europe, to the UK and Germany, and where they could go. And they had a lot of money that they stole from their country. And they were very decadent people and did all the weird drugs and sex and rituals and all that stuff. So, I mean, I've yet to hear somebody, oh, this is the reason they took this celebrity out, or this is the reason why Cat Williams got blackballed in Hollywood. Cat Williams said that there are gay men in Hollywood having gay sex, and gay men are proposing sex to other gay men and other men who are straight, whom they assume might be gay or might be willing to buy or something. Cat Williams was telling that in interviews, and Cat Williams says, I'm the only one in Hollywood with an intact booty hole. My booty hole is intact. He said, I'm quoting him. I would never say nothing so damn stupid. It wasn't even comedy. It's kind of weird, but okay. But he suggested that Kevin Hart and other comedians that were more successful than him, excluding Dave Chappelle, didn't have intact booty holes. And then people created these conspiratorial. Now, and say, "Oh, this is why Cat Williams is going to jail and getting locked up every 5 minutes. This is why some black teenager beat the shit out of him in the streets. And this is why, I mean, if you've seen his last couple of comedy specials, he's kind of weird because he'll go and talk about the system. And then if you listen to Cat Williams comedies, he's a patriotic American. It's weird as hell. I couldn't even get through that. And this is America. America. He was kind of like Kanye West. America's the best country, and America should have the best stuff. And bad things shouldn't happen to America because America's the best. USA. A lot of these badass black dudes, a lot of them are just white nationalists in black skin. It's weird. And he has American flag and all this patriotic symbols in his show. Don't take my word for it. Go look up some of his more recent shows. Listen to his comedy and what he says. He loves America. But then turn around and claim he's against the system and the establishment. Some weirdos, yes, chauvinist. But anyway, as if we didn't know, listen, I said something I shouldn't have said when I was on Black Power Media. I said, they were talking about athletes and sports and saying, and we were talking about brain damage, encephalopathy and playing these sports. And they were talking about different things talented black youth could do as opposed to playing football and getting brain damaged in sports, right? And so they were talking about, you could play volleyball or you could get a letter in track and field and not get brain damage. And I let it out that I had a varsity letter in drama, in acting. I got a scholarship and a varsity letter in drama in high school. And I was doing Shakespearean plays. I was doing modern plays. Towards the end, we were doing more indie plays. We did Young, Gifted, and Black. I did Scapino, some, and some of the canon. I played Puck in A Midsummer's Night's Dream. So I did theater and I did traveling theater over the summer. I thought I wanted to be an actor for quite some time. But, them practical aunties and grandmas came and, boy, you got to get a real job. So I fell for the real job hustle. And I studied radiography for 2 years. And by then I was off acting. But all that to say, I don't know if it's a stereotype or not. But when I was in theater, as a straight heterosexual cisgender black men, we are kind of like the offshoot. Yeah, gay people in theater, gay people in the arts. Duh. And a lot of times gay people gravitated to the arts and theaters because they couldn't get hired at real men jobs. So they got in where they fit in. But why do we think these people come on here and say these things? And we think, the Illuminati is going to kill them or blackball them for telling us what we should already know if we had any half a brain in our head anyway. The elites, the economic and political elites have been engaged in debauchery since the Babylonians. Since the Code of Hammurabi and the first Nile Valley civilizations, the Egyptian monarchs were into incest and sex parties. I know y'all hate to hear that about the Egyptian, but I don't support no monarchs, even African monarchies. And to me, a lot of things the Egyptian did were hella stupid. And I know some of y'all are Sarset people, some of y'all Egyptian cultists. We was Egyptian. I know y'all not gonna like to hear that, but there's a lot of foolishness. If you want somebody to look up to the Indus and to the Kushites, to the Dogon. We got plenty of other African civilizations to look up to. Egyptians were, I mean, their architectural techniques were unparalleled, but there's more to antiquity than that, ain't it? But I digress. What are we talking about? Politics and health. So when we see these celebrities who die much too young, whether it's from chronic disease, lifestyle addictions, and other lifestyle choices, we are surprised. And it's funny because as we dwell in the black community, we're stepping over the corpses of our brothers and sisters every day. I got an uncle who died in his 50s. And so when I see Coolio or DMX die at a relatively young age, Look up the life expectancy for black men in the United States. Look up the occurrence of cardiovascular disease, heart disease, neurological, rheumatoid, chronic rheumatoid ailments. I don't want to tell people's business, but I got relatives who are not more than 1 or 2 decades. I mean, knee replacements, hip replacements, pacemakers, type 2 diabetes, the sugar. My God, the sugar is a pandemic. So as we see our brothers and sisters, literal and figurative, cultural and social, biological brothers and sisters, and racial brothers and sisters, dropping like flies, and the few who don't die too young, before they get into their 30s, they got half a dozen prescription medications, then had another half dozen invasive medical procedures. We sick. AF. And having a lot of money and showing up on the screens of the white folks' computer screens, white folks' phone screens, white folks' flat TV screens, white folks' big movie screens does not exempt you from being black. So yes, the black famous, the black talented, the black ball chasers and rappers and singers and actors, and even the black politicians will fall prey to the same conditions that harm the rest of us. I say all the time, black wealth is a ransom. When a white person gets rich, that's something different. You know, when Bill Gates gets his millions of dollars, he starts thinking about, how do I shape the world? What do I want the world to look like for my children and great grandchildren? Goes up and buys up agricultural land. I mean, these white people are like, what do I want the atmosphere to be like? What do I want the freaking atmosphere? What direction do I want the jet stream to flow in? How will we power the homes? What will be the priorities, the values, the outlook, the ambition? Do I want us to live at the bottom of the ocean, or do I want us to colonize Mars? That's when white folks get big money. That's what they do. They set their children up to rule the world. And then they determine what type of world they want to rule and set about constructing that world. Black elites don't do that. Black elites say, I'm going to set my children up to get good jobs. I'm going to set my children up to live in the world that the white man makes. I'm going to set my children up to have opportunities in the world that our oppressors construct, not to construct the world as they see fit. They don't even have a concept for how they want the world to be, let alone have an agenda for achieving that. That's why they are not capitalists. That's why they are not truly elite. They are petty bourgeois, petit bourgeois. I say petty. I know petit is petit, but I say they petty. They are hyper consumerists. The only difference between me, Jay-Z, Oprah, and the Obamas is our consumption capacity. They can buy more shit, but only shit that they're willing to sell. And anything the white man deems that you can't own, no more amount of money means you can buy it. You know, Byron Allen is a good example. Byron Allen wanted to buy an NFL team, and he put in a bid. Billionaire black man wanted to buy the sports team. I don't even know which ones, the Broncos. And they were like, nah, boy. And they saying, listen, right now you can't have a team. The white elites will determine when it's appropriate for black man to have sole ownership of a team. They said that time ain't right now, boy. They say, nope. And Byron was like, look, I got a white wife. Half of it's going to still be yours. But they told him, no, boy, go, boy. Right? And he was in a position to. Just like when Cosby wanted to buy NBC. Now, that ain't, but Cosby is a serial rapist. He's a predator, and he's an Uncle Tom sellout. So if all them 100 women were lying on him, we should still discard Cosby. But anyway, I digress. But they told this black man, You can't buy no team because the NFL teams are very influential. If you go to an NFL game, which don't go, NFL, boycott the NFL. And like I said, I can't ever join y'all because, and I'm going to tie this to health. Listen, this is all connected. Yeah. This is all connected. Let me not look at the comments because y'all distracted me, right? So they told this man that if you ever been to an NFL game, it's jingoism, it's patriotism, it's Western imperialism. Football is America's game. Yeah. Football is America's game. And we just not ready to have a black man. When we say you can have one, you can have one, but you won't determine for yourself all the money in the world. Just like when it was time for a colored president, they say, okay, we'll have a colored president, but not before we say. And when you get in here, you're going to conduct as we tell you. Obama did not go into office with Obama's agenda or Obama administration. Obama went in there with the Clinton agenda. He went in there with the DNC agenda. He was not our president. He was their president. But after they told this dude, hey, boy, no team for you, but you want to make history? We give you a way to make history. Here you go, boy. It's like Byron Allen makes history with most expensive home purchase by African American in U.S. history. They did that literally days after he put up money. The money he was going to spend on owning a ball team, and not that I want a black NFL owner. I don't want a black NFL owner. I don't think the NFL should exist. I want NFL black divestment from the NFL. I want every black player to do like that one dude did, the one weird dude, when he took off his clothes. I want every NFL player to strip naked on the field and run out the stands. I want to gut and end the NFL. Black ownership does not help black people. Okay. But anyway, they told this dude, you can't have a team, but we tell you what, take that money you was going to put up for the team and go buy the biggest house, and we're going to give you all the headlines. So this is what they do to the black elite. Consumption capacity. What you going to do with all that house? They ain't got no kids. It's just him and that white woman. You know, you just going to chase that white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Aryan white woman he married to around that mansion. But you ain't going to be chasing no balls around the field, boy. So that's how it works. That's power. Money is not power. Money is currency. Fiat is a placeholder. So anyway, what does that have to do with chronic disease and black people dying so early? These type of things, this is what it's called. Again, they like changing names. It was called microaggressions. Can't call shit racism because everything's racist. So these microaggressions. So black people, we're born under siege, and we find ways to mechanisms to help assuage our pain as an oppressed population under genocidal oppression. We get money, we get alterations to our body, we bleach our skins, we have healthy coping mechanisms such as educating ourselves about the reality of the world, organizing ourselves to change the reality of the world, to unite with other people, organize and resist. We got maladaptations, and we have treasons. We have people that submit to the status quo, and we have people who embrace and join the status quo. It's the same thing. But the reality is, as we're seeing every time you go online and you see hashtag and find one of our hashtag excellence, black excellence, hashtag girl boss, hashtag black king, one of black elite who has suffered an untimely death or, colon cancer with Chadwick. I liked Chadwick. I like that James Brown movie. When my dad was in prison, he told me to go read the autobiography of James Brown. So even though it was much more that they left out, but I read that one of the first biography. I think that's the first biography I ever read. It's by James Brown. But anyway, so I liked the movie. My wife didn't like the movie, but I liked it. The James Brown movie. But when we see Chadwick Boseman dying of colon cancer, when you see black people die, it's not the same as when white people die. We not the same because black people live under perpetual oppression. Oppression creates psychological and neurological and hormonal disruption. When you are in the womb, Dr. Tom Hartman has done a lot of research. Well, he didn't do the research, he's really aggregated and compiled the research on epigenetics and even prenatal development, fetal development. And what the research basically articulates that if a woman is impregnated and carries a child to term under stressors, it reorients the child physiologically. If a woman is in a state of security, feeling secure, feeling validated, feeling safe, proper nutrition and care, then the baby is sent biological, neurological, and hormonal signals saying you are being born into a safe space. And so those children are born physiologically uh, less receptive to pain, less sensitive to light and other stimulus, less they cry more infrequently. Their neurological development is different. The parts of their brain that develop in terms of their cognitive brain versus their ligament, the sympathetic versus nervous system and the development, literally the condition, not even the actual, the material condition and the way your mother perceives the material condition that they are in affects the fetus. And children who are born to women under undue stress, their cognitive development is delayed, their neurological development is hypersensitive and more prone to be to disruption, neurological disruption. And what's really unfortunate about that, what's really, because basically this is evolution. The mother sends signals to the offspring saying you're being born into a nurturing, safe environment, or you're being born into a hostile, unsafe environment. And so your development, whereas if you're in a safe environment, you can focus on complex, abstract thinking, the kind of thinking that scholars and philosophers do. If you're born in a high stress womb, if you're come to terms in a womb that is saturated with stress hormones, you're not going to be focusing on the minutia and nuance. You're going to focus on big picture. You're going to be more apt to not have difficulty focusing. And then they create educational systems and child educational systems that is oriented towards those born in the low stress wombs instead of making accommodation for high stress wombs. And then they label those brilliant children. It doesn't affect their intelligence or even their capacity to learn, but it affects how they learn and what they're most receptive to versus what they don't respond to. So just go to tomhartman.com. I don't recall the book. I read I can post the article. I'll try to find the article, but he did write the book. And there was one book he wrote that touched this called Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. He likes to give his books those ethereal titles, but I mean, it's science based, but he also likes to get into a lot of hippie shit, but bless Tom's heart. Saves me some work. But anyway, that's where it starts. Black people literally are oppressed in the womb. Black people are oppressed in the womb. And then we come into a society that is not welcoming, responsive, or supportive. Like my wife and I, for Black people, we on paper are some good Negroes, man. My wife has a PhD. I have a master's. My wife, no, we got honors. We graduated with honors from our respective studies. We no felonies, and I know, shoot, a lot of my homies got felony convictions. We don't have any felony records. Our children were born in wedlock. What were they born in wedlock? That's our children were born into a stable home, stable relationship, educated parents, two-parent household. With affluent relatives. We have relatives, multilingual family, and stable family life. All of that. We look good on paper. We did everything the white man said you're supposed to do. But even when we walk in, we want to buy a car, buy a house, have our home appraised, walk into a store, and none of that freaking matters. None of that matters. You come to appraise our home, and we're like, did this trash appraise our home properly? Did this trash, upselling us, downselling us? We have a bank we've banked with since we moved here to Chicago, and then I pull up an article and send it to my wife about how the bank we bank with is discriminating against black people on business and housing loans. And like, well, do we switch banks? Where are we gonna go? Bank of America? Where Wells Fargo? Which part we'll go? There's no sanctuary. So a stable and upstanding and picket fenced 2.5 children and a dog, as much as my wife and I walk the line. But because we are conscious black people, we are not black people who delude ourselves. We are black people grounded in reality-based, evidence-based individuals. We don't have the illusion that we's free or it's all good or we pulled ourselves up by our bootstrap or none of that bullshit. So the daily stresses of being black, whether it's my wife going off to do research on incarcerated individuals, whether it's me organizing in the community trying to cultivate a garden, and people are harassing and vandalizing the garden, and I'm like, is this racism? Whether it's my son going off to college, how will he be discriminated against? And will the on-campus police, my son who's in the university, with the on-campus police profile, because he's a 6'4" black man with locks halfway down his back. My younger son, who's just a high school student, can he navigate the south side of Chicago, get on the bus, or walk to go get a cup of cocoa from the Starbucks without being harassed by the cops or the gangs? And hey, take it beyond us. We some Negroes that look good on paper. You go to Russell Simmons, man worth what, $800 million? And his daughters go to school and get called nigger, monkey. You go to these other wealthy people and then wonder why, whether you're a poor black man panhandling on the street corner or you a wealthy black man who's traveled the world, who's been through 100 passports, a man who's known and beloved across the globe, and you dying like Prince. You just laid out on the floor in your early 50s, or like Michael Jackson, you OD in your own bed. Oppression is tied to that. And if we looked at Dr. Amos Wilson and his research in child development, psychological and intellectual development, the neurological, black people are actually born with benefits. Our brains are bigger, more sophisticated, and develop faster. African children are able to sit up faster. They're able to hold their heads up faster. They're able to follow and focus in on objects and follow objects with their eyes within days of birth. Things it takes white babies and other babies weeks and months to do, our children are doing within hours or days of birth. If you look at congenital diseases and congenital genetic and biological defects at birth, black people have some of the lowest rates of congenital disease and defects at birth. Black people have the strongest immune system. Whenever they have to do transplants or any other type of disease where you have to take immunosuppressant, black people have to be given 3 times the immunosuppression as white people for certain procedures. So black people genetically, biologically, developmentally have all these assets, and we live under oppression that turned them into liabilities. How are we born with biological advantages, but yet we end up biologically disadvantaged through oppression? And because they turned health, which was a natural byproduct of life, contaminated water, denatured food, and psychological polluted air, and ongoing unrelenting psychological warfare has turned a robust and essentially healthy people into a people whose life expectancy is decades shorter than the dominant white population. And then we have these con men and women that come and tell us about alkaline diet, hybrid foods, these Dr. Sabies that come and tell us nonsense and myths and lies, yada, about menstrual cycles. And the misinformation side of this is a whole nother thing. But oppression is killing us. This is called a slow genocide. And black people are suffering and dying from ailments that there is medicine and technological and dietary solutions to, but yet we die. So Dr. Bobby E. Wright said black people dying is not a medical issue. It's not a scientific issue. It is a political choice. It is an economic and political predetermined choice. Genocide is not simply extermination. Genocide is when you create conditions for a population to prevent a population from thriving and reproducing themselves. Go look up the formal definition of genocide. It's not simply gas chambers and mass graves. Genocide is putting crack cocaine in the black community. Genocide is lead paint. We live in lead Central Station. Genocide is lead contaminated water, and not investing the infrastructure to fix it. And I'm not just in the before Detroit, before Michigan, Flint, Michigan, the red zone for lead contaminated, the children with the highest level of lead contamination was on the south side of Chicago. The Hyde Park School District, high school area. And my wife taught in these schools. I've worked in these schools as everything from a substitute to a chess instructor and chess coach to running after school programs, green teens. And I could look at these children and I'm like, this child has neurological issues based on lead contamination. Just look at the symptoms and look at half the black kids in the inner city. These homes, these poor homes, these Section 8 homes are full of lead paint, lead powder. And all of that can be abated. They have the technology for testing. They have technology for remediation, and they don't invest it because they don't see us as worth it. When you turn on the TV and you see George Floyd, you turn on the TV and you see Breonna Taylor. When you turn on this TV and see the system, those tasked with quote unquote protecting us, taking our lives with impunity. When you turn on the radio, I kill a nigga, dead nigga, die, fuck nigga, free. Dehumanizing, degrading music that creates tension, that is it's negative stimulation. You start to emit stress hormones like cortisol. Cortisol disrupts your glucose metabolism, diabetes, weight gain, literally kidney failure. And I say all the time, if they covered chronic health issues the way they cover crime in our community, it would cause a revolution tomorrow. I could walk out here right now and shoot somebody in around the corner from my house. I could go up on King Drive. I could go to O Block and shoot somebody. And every news company in Chicago, every news helicopter will come there and red tape and tape off and have cameras live, broadcasting live from the scene of the shooting. I could already be in custody. I could be in custody, already be arraigned. I could be in downtown, in the police station, talking to my defense attorney, trying to explain what I was doing and why I did it. Nowhere around. I'm no longer, I'm in handcuffs, I'm in shackles, and I'm sitting behind glass or bars. But the news report will be right there. Several hours ago, 2 days ago, there was a shooting right here. And look, and they'll show whatever's there. If there's broken glass, if there's blood or anything, and they show it up to the minute. Be like, damn, every time I look at the news, the corporate news, and I'm like, why are they showing this? It's not happening there. They could have just done this reporting from home. They could have done it from the studio. Why do they have these satellite feeds? It's the stress hormones. They showed straight. Look at this place is a place of danger. And then if they went to the emergency room, if they went to the hospital, like I said, if they showed our aunties and uncles being brought out with bandages over their eyes, blinded by type 2 diabetes, foots amputated, toes amputated, sores that won't heal from kidney disease. If they showed a stent and the inflamed and the blown out veins from dialysis. Oh, we're reporting here live, satellite feed. And they say, stick out your arm. You see that vein. It's like 4 inches in bulging arms and open wounds and sores. If they show the scars, the deep scars from the knee replacement and the hip replacement, from rheumatoid, if they show the swollen fingers from rheumatoid arthritis, if they showed that like they showed the violence, it would be a transformation of our community. But it's too profitable. Capitalism doesn't seek to solve problems. It seeks to profit from problems. What can we do? The number one thing we can do, don't follow the Sabi diet. Release your chakras, because these people telling you this can be escaped through delusion and denial. I'm going to erect my shrine. I'm going to burn some sage. I'm going to hit the gong. Those people are not free of that stress. They are not free of those stress hormones. Yes, you should exercise. Yes, you should take some time to walk in nature. Yes, you should take some time to just breathe, inhale through the nostrils, exhale through the mouth. I'm not saying don't do that, but those aren't solutions. Those are mitigations. If you're doing that in conjunction with struggling for Black liberation, to challenge and dismantle the systems and institutions of industrial capitalism and white hegemony, then those things are supplements and supports to the proper behavior. If you're doing that exclusively, that is called escapism. That is called escapism. And believe you me, I am vegan. You know, every morning my wife and I go to the farmer's market every Saturday morning. Spring, summer, fall, and some of the winter, we're at the farmer's market eating food that has just been local food from local farms, organic farms. We grow food, organic, non-GMO. We filter our tap water. We do all the healthy stuff. We take time to enjoy family. We go on walks. We go down to Starved Rocks and nature walks. We do all that stuff. We take time for self-care. But that is to rejuvenate us to rejoin the struggle. That is to rejuvenate us so that we can make positive contributions to the just aspirations of our people. That is not so I can pretend like I'm separate and apart and above low vibration stuff. I rejuvenate to better contribute to my people's struggle for liberation. I don't rejuvenate to escape the reality of the world I live in. So, in summary, stop worshiping and supporting celebrities. If you are entertained by the things they do, enjoy that entertainment. And when you turn off the TV, you should also turn on your connection and loyalty. If they are not revolutionary artists, they don't deserve our support beyond watching their videos or their games and turn that shit off. Let them go. We have to dismantle celebrity culture. It is very disruptive. Number two, these rich folks are not exempt from the blackness and the consequences of being black. Number three, definitely take what precautions you can to preserve your health, to deal with any type of chronic diseases, ailments, and so on and so forth. But understand that ultimately, in order to curb this and to address this, and I'm not talking about people like born with type 1 diabetes and people suffering from muscular dystrophy and other. I'm talking about the chronic diseases and ailments that come as a result of oppression, come as a result of capitalism industry, the toxins in our environment, the toxins in our psyche. That's very much different from someone being, disabled or born, disabled or being afflicted with a disability. I am very much in support of the disabled community and them getting the supports that they need, whether they're visually impaired, physical ailments or what. I'm very much in support of that. I'm not saying that we should orient and make a way for all our people to live dignified lives, regardless of what support and help they need. But the ailments and illnesses that come as a result of oppression, we need for systemic problems, we need systematic and collective solutions. And as a vegan, I'm telling you, vegans, don't go out here telling black people veganism going to solve our problem or veganism's going to cure and all that. Don't oversell it. Veganism is more so about animal rights and making sure we don't contribute to the misery of other sentient beings. But it ain't going to save us. I got as much dioxin and microplastics in my lungs as a meat eater does. Well, maybe not as much, but I mean, I don't want to undersell veganism either. In a toxic environment, the best thing you can do is get low on the food chain. Toxins in the environmental toxics concentrate up the food chain, which means the top predator has the most contaminations. So in the ocean, the whales and the killer whales and the sharks and the large mammals of the ocean, the leopard seal, they have the highest concentrations of contaminants in the ocean because contaminants concentrate up the food chain. So you want to get low on the food chain. And the lowest creatures on the food chains are, well, the plants. They literally consume light, water, and oxygen. But as far as mammals, the herbivorous mammals are lowest on the food chain. But as they eat, they concentrate the toxins, and you eat them, you're not just eating the toxins from you, you're eating the toxins from them, especially fish. Lord, stop eating fish. Even if you want to eat the carcasses of dead, stop eating fish. Stop eating chicken. Lord, have mercy. But I don't know what to tell y'all, man. Go vegan for the animals and for yourself. But that's not going to free us. I've been vegan over 30 years now. And I tell you, I ain't got one iota more freedom than the brother eating the meat. So if you're going vegan for freedom, you're playing yourself. But I do think you should go vegan for the sake of the animals. But I'm gonna have to wrap this up. I'm going a little over. Thank y'all for joining me. If you can, please support the BroDiallo broadcast. Thanks to everyone that has supported and continue to support me. We'll be doing this Wednesday night thing for time being. If there's any updates on the politics and bullshit or any of that, I'll definitely keep. Let me not steal this pen. Put the pen back. I'm on tape. Putting the pen back. But I appreciate everyone tuning in tonight. I will see y'all Friday morning on the Black Power Media morning mix show with Jared Ball and Geechee Motivator. Is he still Geechee Motivator or just Geechee Y'all now? And then, of course, next Monday, it will be the morning AM BroDiallo broadcast. Y'all didn't call in. Man, I put the number up, didn't call in. So don't be complaining when I don't give. But I'm going to start giving out the number. Maybe if I give out the number more often, I'll get calls. And thank you very much. If you have any suggestions for show topics or guests you'd like me to have on the BroDiallo broadcast, please don't hesitate. And y'all have a good evening. I still think you should this is cold and flu season, and we not out of the woods on this COVID. There's still over 500 people a day around the United States dying of COVID. So please continue to take whatever precautions you deem necessary based on your level of risk for COVID. Now, I guess that's it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like, share, support when and if you can.